Welcome to the Free Culture Sports Show. I've got my glasses on today, so you got a little bit of glare because Wendy put some solution in my contacts, and you have to wait 6 hours. You could probably wash them off with water, but whatever. I'm just waiting my 6 hours. So.
Wait 6 hours? That's some intense stuff.
It's got hydrogen peroxide in it, so you have to. It's the kind that has the. I don't know what the catalyst is, but it has a little metal catalyst in there, and it kills everything. And yeah, so you have to wait 6 hours. You probably, I mean, like most things, you probably don't actually have to wait 6 hours, but it's only been 3.5 or so at this point, so probably not quite long enough. But it kind of makes me look like I have on like I'm some sort of cyborg or something. I have or at least that I have like glasses that like have some sort of video on them. I mean, I guess technically it's a reflection of a video, but anyway, it's sort of if I keep it at a good angle, then it'll be consistently like I don't know. Anyway, so also I have shade. We have shades now. So before we had just like put up some. Like we have the kind of windows that use the ropes because it's like an old building, and I had just stuffed like a sheet in there because we didn't have curtain rods or anything. So we finally bought some tension rods, and so now we have some curtains up. So if it's darker and looks weird, it's not because it's like the middle of the night when we're recording or because there's a massive storm. It's because of that. So anyway, I said before we got started, I would tell you a brief story about how I got sick. So probably last Tuesday or so, I told you about my eye. So I think it was like after we were recording, I mentioned this, I think. So I couldn't see very well, or it was during the recording. I told you I fixed it later. I had some problems with my contacts. I also couldn't hear out of my left ear. I don't know if I told you that. So that happened until about Sunday, and I didn't really think too much of it. I think I was kind of on the tired side on Saturday. I woke up tired on Sunday. Went and played soccer. I normally play on Saturday. But I was like, okay, I'll see what this Sunday. They play an hour later on Sunday. I was like, I'll see what this is like because I couldn't play on Saturday. I had something to do. So I played, and I was like, man, this is like not working at all. This hour later thing. I was just dragging so much, couldn't breathe. Like it was terrible, and still didn't think much of it. And so I got back, and basically I figured out that my ear infection, which hadn't hurt at all. It was just like there's just fluid in my ear. Basically, I can't hear out of it unless if I like pull my ear, I can hear. But aside from that, I can't hear. And so like basically the reason I couldn't play, I scored a goal. Just playing like up top, standing around. But and we don't, we use those little goals where we don't score a whole ton, But yeah, so maybe my Sunday career is not over in the heat. Maybe it was just because of that, but I still feel not very good. So after this, I got up to do this, and then after this, I'm going to try to go back to sleep again. But who knows if yesterday I wasn't able to do that. So yeah, now who knows if I would have gotten this sick anyway. But playing out there for 2 hours was not the smartest idea, although I hadn't really had any symptoms until then, other than the ear thing. And so Saturday, when this Chelsea-Swansea game happened, I was sitting around resting, but wasn't feeling sick yet. But I did watch the Chelsea-Swansea game on NBC. So did you see the NBC game? I know you have access to the NBC Sports Extra or whatever they call it, so you get to see all the games, which I do not. So I usually I watch them whenever they're on NBC.
All I saw was part of the Liverpool game and close to the end of the Man City game.
So just briefly, I mean, Chelsea did not look good. And I know that a lot of people have said they did not look good in preseason. So
Well, I mean, they tied 2-2 in their first game. I mean, they lost to Arsenal in the Community Shield, who turned around and got beat by West Ham 2-0. So, I mean, and they didn't look good in preseason, but they didn't really bring anybody in but Falcao, who doesn't really fit Mourinho's system and is a backup. So, I don't know. They definitely need to do something, I feel like, before the end of the transfer window, but it's hard to look at their team and tell them what it is. Because if you base it on last year's performance, there's nobody really they can get outside of, like somebody that they'd have to spend like 100 million pounds on to improve their team.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the thing about Falcao is he shares an agent with Mourinho. So who knows, what's going on there. And he needed somebody who was going to be willing to be a backup. So, it's tough to find a top quality striker who's willing to be a backup.
Yeah, that's true. Very true.
So, I mean, at first, there for a while at the beginning of the game, Chelsea was really bossing it. And then, I don't know, I didn't really notice Swansea doing a ton to change things, but they just, kept trying to soak up pressure. And I kept thinking that, once they went a man down, that Chelsea was going to win it on the counter because they like to play on the counter. That's what you do when you're a man down. The decision to take off Oscar was an interesting one. I mean, I guess it's because of the position that he plays on the field, but, I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't follow Chelsea well enough, but I would think there are weaker players on the field than Oscar that you might take off. You could move Oscar out into Williams' spot, perhaps.
You don't know with I'm assuming Oscar played in the Copa America. I mean, I know Brazil didn't make it too terribly far in that, true. But I know that at least with Liverpool's concerns with their new signing Firmino and Coutinho as well, because they played in the Copa America, their training was a little bit set back, especially since the Premier League starts a little bit earlier this year. They just, at least Brendan Rodgers didn't seem to think that they were quite ready. I mean, I know Coutinho ended up playing all 90 minutes.
Well, and Coutinho plays in Neymar's position, and I know Neymar ended up getting a suspension, but he didn't play all of the games of the Copa America. I mean, there's the fact that you're like outside of the Liverpool training, so there's just being behind from that perspective. But just as far as like not having legs, on top of being booted early, he didn't play all of them. So.
Yeah, so I mean that could be something that was with Oscar. But I'm not quite sure. I think going a man down really just and having to make a goalkeeper sub kind of threw all of what Mourinho wanted to do out.
Did you see the red card on replay?
I did.
It seemed like a pretty obvious red card to me. I mean, the announcers were trying to make this big deal about Tim Cahill being there. But, like, if you're a Premier League striker and all you've got to do is, like, left foot it into an open net, like, it seems like that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean,
opportunity.
A lot of what I read was like, well, his touch was taking him away from the goal.
It was basically straight in front of him.
I don't know. That seemed to be no. I think maybe they said that he could have touched it away from the goal, but he decided to go like towards Courtois, like like looking for the impact.
Yeah.
And so maybe they were like, since he was looking for the impact, it should have only been a yellow card. I don't know.
Okay, well I'm okay with saying maybe it's a yellow card, I guess, in that respect. But the idea that like Tim Cahill was like the reason why. I mean, that was just silly. But yeah, I guess I can see, that. But I mean, it was so obviously like his foot was like out there. I mean, you can't. Courtois should know better than that.
Well, yeah, he should.
So let's move on to the United game. There's not a lot to say about this other than I think that if Rooney had not scored on the goal that was the own goal, the only goal of the game, it would have been maybe not, it's the first game of the season, obviously, so who knows. But it definitely, I think, would have stood up as a contender for miss of the year. I mean, the goal was open. He's, a world-class striker. You got to put that in the back of the net. It's, Walker is trying to do something to get in the way, and he puts it in the back of the goal. But honestly, I think that game ends 1-0 either way.
Mm. Well, I didn't see anything of it. I saw the result. I could have, you see a 1-0 result, you could see a lot of things into that if you don't know anything about the game. It could be that the game was not very good and there just happened to be an own goal somehow to kind of highlight how bad the game was. It could have been one team was pressing the entire time, but the other team just didn't let them score. Could have been that Tottenham was pressing the whole time and, man, you got it on the counterattack. So I really didn't read into it to know how the game was.
All right, I'm just saying, like, on that one particular play, like Rooney was standing in front of an open goal and, like, Kyle Walker's, like, sprinting back to try to get in front of Rooney. And if, like, he slows down, at the very least he's, like, running into the back of the Rooney and giving a penalty or maybe he's getting a yellow card for, doing that anyway, even if Rooney does score. But, it just seemed like in that particular instance, who knows psychologically how an actual goal affects you differently than an own goal, how that would have changed. But just saying on that particular play,
yeah,
it wasn't, I don't know. I mean, this is often the case with own goals is that, you've put the defense in a position where they're scrambling and, you might have put the ball in the net if they didn't. I mean, that's not uncommon.
Yeah.
So the own goal made me think about, though, back in the 09-10 season, Manchester United, their third leading goal scorer in all competitions and in the Premier League was own goal, behind only Berbatov and Rooney. Now, Rooney had a really great season that year, and who knows, they may have gone on to even win the Champions League that year if not for a Rooney injury and both Rafael da Silva red card against Bayern in the quarterfinals that year. They almost certainly would have gone on and beat Bayern in the quarterfinals if not for both of those things happening. It's really hard to say because, I mean, Rooney that year basically was the team. So how far could he have carried them? But he got his ankle stamped on in that series. And then maybe they still could have won it if Da Silva had not. I want to say it was Ribéry, but I don't remember. But anyway, it was like a long way from goal, but he was beaten and he grabbed him and, it would have been one-on-one, but it was like 40 yards away from the goal or something, like there might've been a chance for somebody to run back behind and catch up with the ball carrier. But it might've been a second yellow, to be honest. It might not have been a straight red. But regardless, he pulled on him and he was gone, and that was sort of ended those hopes. But United only finished 1 point behind Chelsea that season. So it wasn't like United had a bad year. They had 85 points. It was just that for whatever reason, well, first of all, Rooney was scoring all the goals. And then own goal just happened to be particularly prolific that year. And United has a long history of former United players scoring own goals against them. This was particularly true in the Fergie era. Although it happened last year, Wes Brown scored an own goal against United. So I don't know what that is, but there just seems to be this thing about there are a lot of, kids that come through the academies and then they go out. But Wes Brown was like, a Champions League medal winner. It wasn't like he was like, some guy who, played for the youth team and never played a first team appearance. Not like Akram, who's the guy who plays for Malmo now. which maybe we will talk about Malmo very briefly at the end. But let's go ahead and move on to LFC. So you think, well, you posed the question, is Coutinho ready to be a star? I assume you're sort of leaning that direction, or you wouldn't ask it in the first place.
Well, I mean, I think he's going to be by far the best player on the team this year. May have been last year. I think he was the only player from the team to be on like the one of the like awarded Premier League 11 teams. Most of them were Chelsea players, but he was on it. And it's just moments like that goal that he had against Stoke, where it's kind of like I'm going to do something so that we don't, or that we win, or that we don't lose. I mean, that's just what it seemed to me. I mean, it kind of came out of nowhere. Just a wonderful shot. You know, the goalkeeper probably should have been able to parry it over the goal. He got a hand on it, but it wasn't enough. But I mean, it was a far strike, and just kind of, you know, I'm just going to take this shot and see what happens, and not let her, you know, try to score. And I just wonder if that's something that, you know, you can see in a player and just be like, you know, no matter what, this guy's going to help us find a way to win. And that's what you want in a lot of your players. I mean, if there is somebody who's going to stand out this year, it's going to be him for Liverpool, unless one of the young players just goes crazy. It's just, I think he can be a star, but if you're a star at Liverpool these days, that doesn't necessarily mean you're a you know, world-class star. And that's where I want to know if he can reach that. I don't know if this year's the year, but I think he has the potential.
Can he play anywhere besides out on the left?
He can play in the center.
Okay, so that's Oscar's position still. I don't know who plays on the right for Brazil. I'm just thinking, like, you know, where would his spot potentially be? Because I think, you know, if you're not playing for your country, then you're sort of limiting your star power.
Yeah. He played he started centrally behind Benteke, and then when they subbed Lallana off for Emre Can, he came on. Or when he came on, Coutinho moved to the left. I'm not quite sure how their formation looked once he came on, but I mean, once Sean came on, so I'm not really sure if he was playing like a left winger. That's probably what you would call it. He moved to left winger, and that's where the goal came from.
So looks like Willian might play out right for Brazil. So I mean, that might be a spot that he could take. And I'm looking at some of the formations here for them. So it looks like, I don't know, Oscar maybe has played some out on the right too. I don't know, but I mean, that's the thing. It's hard to see him taking Oscar's spot or Neymar's spot. So, you know, and that assumes that Brazil continues to play that position, but I mean, that formation, but, you know, even if they change things, you're still looking at, you know, he's not a central striker. I mean, Brazil doesn't have a central striker really. So, I mean, not, you know, a world-class one. So
he needs the ball at his feet. And he obviously doesn't have the height, to be a target man, although you don't really play that. A lot of teams don't really play that anymore.
Right. Well, you can play, you know, like the Messi role, the false nine, as they like to call it. I mean, I don't know.
Well, that's kind of what he would play, but that's not what he kind of plays for Liverpool. So I don't know if that's what how Brazil would use him or not. I mean, he's supposedly he's just a playmaker, but a distributor.
Yeah.
Kind of holds the ball up and plays the outside or tries to work through whoever the forward is, maybe passes it up and makes a run and then has a shot on goal. Whereas, Neymar, at least last year for Barcelona, was a finisher. I think he had a lot more goals than he did assists.
Well, I mean, Brazil relies on him too much for goals as well.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see. So I mentioned Malmo. They play Celtic. That game, there's a gap in the qualification. So that's next week, the 18th. It might be the 9th. The 18th and the 19th are when the two sets of games are. So United plays a Belgian team, Club Brugge. I probably am mispronouncing that, but I'm just going to Brugge, maybe. Don't know. Bruges, maybe. So, but Liverpool, they're not in the Europa League, right?
No, they are.
They escaped the Euro. Oh, they are in there.
Yeah.
Are they straight into the group stage?
I think so. I was just looking at it. I think they're straight into the group stage.
I haven't seen them in qualification talk, but I haven't been, because I've been following the Champions League. I have not been following the Europa League very closely. So
yeah, and I hadn't been either. I'd just kind of forgotten that they were in it until the games are going to come up. Let me see here. Yeah, they're straight into the group stage. Them and Tottenham both.
Okay, so that's still not for a while, a little while anyway. So, well, do you have anything else? I'm gonna try to get a preview of the Celtic Malmo game sometime before that starts. Who knows if my whatever infection I've got clears up in time for me to actually get that done, but I've got an extra week to do it, so hopefully.
Well, I'm curious after this week one, first week of the Premier League, who do you think at this point is going to be the champion?
Well, I mean, it's hard to. I think all your players are, all your typical players, big four, big five, big six. They're all still there. I don't think, the Community Shield is basically a preseason game. Chelsea probably would have won that game. They didn't look great, but they probably would have won that game if not for the sending off. So basically you're looking at City, as being like the one team that didn't sort of like massively look bad. Of the people that you would sort of think would be the serious title contenders.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't see, unless you think that Benteke is, gonna put goals for Liverpool to be a serious title contender.
No, I think, they've got a lot of issues still with the defense that, they need more consistency. I know they didn't give up any goals against Stoke, but, and that's a 6-goal improvement from the last time they played Stoke. I think you need to see more before you can say anything about Liverpool. Man City obviously looked the best. They had the best result. I think Chelsea, at this point, I was ready to write Man City off, but they have this kind of, we're going to come back mentality when they don't do well one year and they just kind of like, okay, we want to be champions again, and they show up the next season. So they kind of have that going for them right now. I think Chelsea is going to get a lot better than what they did this weekend if Courtois can stop getting red cards.
You would think that would be possible. So.
Yeah, and you would think, but we'll see. So I don't know. Arsenal's somebody brought up a good question about Arsenal, or a good point about Arsenal, is that they just don't have any depth. Or it seems they don't have any depth. So if they start having some injuries, then they're going to have big issues. Like, they might have the best 11, starting 11, but after that, they don't have too much depth. And so I'm worried when they start doing Champions League stuff, if that's going to hurt them with the Premier League. So at this point, I'm going to say it's between Man City and Chelsea, and I'm going to give the nod to Chelsea for right now still.
Yeah, I think that's probably where I am. I mean, if City doesn't bring in De Bruyne, then that'll really help them, who was doing nothing at Chelsea for a while and then went to Wolfsburg and lit the place on fire. So, maybe he'll come back to the Premier League and look like an also-ran again. I don't know, but you got to think maybe that's some development on his side that is the reason why, he did well at Wolfsburg. So I think that'll really help him, because City has struggled to find creativity outside of David Silva. So he'll bring that in. Mm-hmm. And again, I mean, the big thing with Chelsea is the striker situation. Is Remy and Falcao, is that enough backup for Acosta, who is undoubtedly going to be injured? Of course, they can always wait to get another striker in January, wait for the Costa injury to happen and then go out and get somebody. In some respect, people say that you spend extra money in January, but from a financial fair play perspective, spending the money when you need to spend the money might actually make sense. Even if you're being charged premium, you've not paid for, however many months of wages. Now, the player doesn't bet in, but, if all you need from the person is to get the ball and stick it in the back of the net, I think it might be a little bit easier for a striker to bet in than a midfielder, for example, or a central defender where, or even any of the defenders really, where communication is so important. I mean, when all you're doing is playing with one person up top and they are the show up there, let them, you don't need to bet in. Just give me the ball.
Yeah.
They need the one-man wrecking crew up there. So, I think Costa will get hurt at some point.
Depends. Yeah, you would think
that's what history suggests. So, yeah. And Remy gets a lot of stick, and I don't quite understand, why people don't like him.
Well,
he's not a big, body around guy. He's fast, but
I will tell you this: he was days away from signing with Liverpool, and he did his medical, and they found something that they would just were like, and they ended up not signing him, and that's how he ended up. After that, he ended up signing with Chelsea. So there was something in that medical that Liverpool was like, we don't really want to take a shot on this guy. And I don't know if that's like as well known as I know it to be, and if that's why some people don't, kind of give him enough credit, because they know that that's weighing in the back of everybody's mind. Or if they just were like, he hasn't produced at a top club yet. I don't know.
Yeah.
That could be part of it. Like, oh, you were decent at where was he? Newcastle?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you were decent at Newcastle. It doesn't take much to be decent at Newcastle. It's probably what some people are thinking. So he's got to show up for Chelsea.
Yeah. In some respects, it's harder to be good for a bad team.
Well, that's true. Because you don't have good players around you.
Right.
Or a good manager, maybe.
Right. Although, last season would suggest that Pardew was a pretty good manager. But, Newcastle is just a toxic – Newcastle, the club, not the city, although the city may be too. But Newcastle, the club, is just a toxic place right now. So,
yeah.
Get yourself in the shop window and get out, I think, is a good strategy. And Mike Ashley seems to be willing to send people on their way as well. So, go there for a season or two, get bought by another club, everybody's happy, I guess. Except the fans. Mike Ashley and the player, they're both happy. No one else is happy.
Well, I mean, we'll see. You know, didn't they look like they were not going to be very good last year, and then kind of came around?
Who, Newcastle or?
Yeah.
No, Pardew left. I can't remember. He got sacked, and then they were terrible after that.
Okay, it was the opposite.
They were like solid mid-table, like 10th, and then Pardew was like, "I've had enough of you guys," and they just very narrowly. I mean, on the last day, they escaped relegation.
Yeah, they were not. They were 4 points clear.
Yeah. So another team lost, and then they ended up winning their game as well. So, and I mean, Mike Ashley's thing is he doesn't want to go into the Europa League, so he doesn't want to be that good. So it's like if you're not trying to win, like he wants to be in the Champions League, but it's like if you're not trying to win, how do you skip?
I mean, you can. Okay, you qualify for the Europa League. Unfortunately, I guess you go straight to the group stages, which means 6 extra games automatically.
Well, you don't. Not everybody does.
Well, the fifth and sixth place teams do,
so
or at least they did last year.
Yeah, West Ham has been doing their qualification, and I thought there was another English team in Europa League qualification as well.
I think they got one for fair play. So
I think that was West Ham.
Was there anybody? I thought Liverpool was the last one in. I just pulled it up and then I went away again. But yeah, I did see that the fair play one was in there. Yeah, Southampton did it. Southampton did it in the third qualifying round.
Yeah, that's right. That's the one that I remember seeing them.
That's because Arsenal won the FA Cup beating Villa. If Villa had won that, Southampton wouldn't have gotten their spot. But I mean, that's the third round. You have to finish 7th basically to go into that round. If you finish 5th or 6th, then you go straight into the group stage, which is, like I said, 6 extra games. Whereas if you're in a playoff round, you can just basically field a bunch of 18-year-olds for 2 games, and
which is what teams like Hull City have done in the past, which is why England is in danger of losing their 4th Champions League spot to Italy. So basically, if they have this season as bad as last season, that's what will happen. So,
well, but you also that teams don't perform in the Champions League. I mean,
well,
there's that too.
Yes, but I mean, we're talking about not even getting out of the playoff stages.
Yeah.
I mean, these are like teams that are in the group stage. All the English teams last year made it to the group stages of the Champions League.
True.
So, they're not even getting to the group stages of the Europa League.
And West Ham just got knocked out by some Romanian team.
Yeah.
4-3 on aggregate. So,
and I don't know how that. I mean, they played in extra games. That should help the coefficient, I guess. Getting that extra fair play team in there. I don't know how that works, but they were booted pretty quickly. So,
well, I mean, they won. Looks like they made it through one round, on penalties. They made it through one round on penalties and then lost in the next round. But Southampton made it through 5-0 on aggregate. So.
Right.
They have a Denmark team. I can't pronounce this, but it looks like Midtjylland.
Oh, yeah. There's a J in there.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
I mean, take out what looks odd about it, and it kind of looks like Midtjylland. So.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend like I know how to pronounce it either. I'm not familiar enough with it's Midtjylland. Right? That's the one?
Yeah.
Midtjylland.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, Copenhagen is I think the one team I know anything about from the Super League. Well, and to say I know anything about them is a stretch, I guess.
Well, I mean, Southampton should should make it past them if they really, care to. And based on their 5-0 aggregate win in their last round, I think that they will. So, England will have 3 teams in the group stage. I know that Liverpool will be, they've got a pretty good lineup that they're going to use in Europe. With the depth that they have, they're going to give it a shot. Now, it might not be their best 11, but their best 11 after that actually isn't too big of a drop-off, which is part of the problem with Liverpool. They just got too many kind of, you can almost say, mediocre players and not enough really good players. So, they're going to try. I think Tottenham will give it a shot. I don't see why they wouldn't. And I think Southampton will look to do the best that they can. So I think that they'll be okay. Liverpool has bad history of late. So they should make it out of the group stage, but, who knows? They're they're the last team in the seeding 1 or 2 because their coefficient is so low. But it is what it is. I think that they'll do well in Europe this year, the England teams. I don't know about the Champions League. I mean, I still don't think that they can compete with the top 3 of Munich, Barcelona, and Real Madrid. But, I mean, they should make it quarterfinals at least, if not semifinals. But who knows? That's a ways away.
It's a lot about matchups too.
Yeah,
you get in the round of 16. So
yeah, I mean the round of 16 isn't until this is the Europa, so I'm assuming that the Champions League is around the same time. The draw for it isn't until the end of February.
No, Champions League starts before that, unless they've moved things back this year. So. Oh, actually, that was games I might be remember. Group stage, the end of the group. No, because the group stage ends in November. So yeah, they definitely play games in February in the Champions League. So, or they have in the past.
Well, the round of 32 is in February for the Europa. So
yeah, that's when the Champions League. Yeah. So somewhere they make up the gap with the Europa League. Don't know when, but all right. Anything else before we call it a day?
That's about it.
Okay. Well, we'll have plenty of time, I think, to mention this beforehand, but we are going to do the United Liverpool game on September 12th. And so we pushed back our show that we had planned to do because of that. The next show, though, that we're going to do is the 22nd. So that's next Saturday. So not the 15th, but the Saturday after that is. And we'll have to figure out what we want to do going forward as far as the time. We might end up changing that because that's when I usually play soccer. So we'll just have to figure that out. But for now, that's what's on the schedule. I know you're going back to work next week. So
yep.
Well, I just have to figure that out some other time. So it'd probably be on the 22nd at some point, whether it's earlier or later than 10, I don't know. So, anyway, thanks for watching. Free Culture Sports Show.